Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Iowa Prison Perspectives. For some of you know that I've been gone for about 6 weeks, and some of you have inquired as to how I'm doing. I had a hip replacement, and so I took that time off to recover, and I'm now doing well and I'm back in the game. So, Iowa Prison Perspectives, for those of you who are new, is a collaboration between Living Beyond the Bars of Iowa, the Iowa Justice Action Network, and Iowa Cure. The purpose of this channel is to inform you, the public, about prison and about family members and other loved ones, about what goes on in prison and what the experience is of the people who are affected by prison. I've interviewed people who have been incarcerated, people who have loved ones who have been or are currently in prison, people who have worked for the Department of Corrections, and advocates such as myself who would like to see positive reform come to Iowa in our judicial system. I hope that you will like this interview if you do like it, and I hope to hear from you whether you like it or not. I really am interested, as you know, in your opinions, what you think. If you agree with what I'm doing, if you don't agree, if this information has been helpful, if you disagree with this information, however, whatever your thoughts and feelings are. And if you're someone who you feel like ought to be interviewed, or you know someone who you believe ought to be interviewed, please contact me. I can be reached at iowaprisonperspectives@gmail.com, and that's iaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. In the last week or 10 days, we have found out in Iowa that there is great interest for the Department of Corrections to privatize medical and mental health in all the prisons in Iowa. We have been aware that this has been something that's been on the table for a while, but now it is actually coming to fruition. And so because of that, and because of the kind of changes that that will bring to the people who are incarcerated, I have been in contact with a couple of people and finally have met the man that you're going to hear from tonight, who has an organization specifically about privatized prisons. And I think that what he has to say is going to be very important for you to know and understand. Before I get to him, actually, I do want to say that in Iowa, one of the organizations that is being looked at to be the organization that serves the privatization of medical and mental health is called Vital Core, VITALCORE. And Dr. Greenfield, who used to be the medical director for the prisons in Iowa, is one of the owners of that particular organization. He retired, I believe, 2 years ago, and he is one of the owners of that organization. I did some research and found that Vital Core is being sued in a number of states for their lack of care as far as their privatization, their private treatment of people medically and mental health wise. So I would suggest that you look that up for yourselves. You can Google it and look it up. It's Vital Core. I think that it's important for us to do some research and for us to be aware of what happens when prisons are privatized. So with that, I will turn it over to my new friend, brand new friend, just 2 days friend. His name is John, and he knows a lot about the privatization of prisons. And so, John, please feel free to give us some of your experience and your beliefs about privatization.
Hi, Sue. Thank you for the invitation to appear on your program this Friday afternoon. And for your audience, I am a lawyer in Phoenix, Arizona, where I've practiced since 1977. And in 2015, together with another Phoenix lawyer, I founded a public interest law firm, an Arizona nonprofit called Abolish Private Prisons. We are a 501c3 charity. And if either now or at the end of the program you'd like to know more about us, and get our newsletters, you can sign up at abolishprivateprisons.org. And we will not fill up your inbox. Our newsletters are infrequent. Um,
And I will add that information on our cure letter newsletter that goes out to both people, to inmates who are currently incarcerated and to family members. And I'll put that on all of our websites so that
Thank
people
you.
have that information.
Sure. So before we started, when you and I were just talking a little bit, Sue, you had asked me to describe what got abolished private prisons started.
Mhm.
And so it goes back to I was doing some pro bono work for the federal district court in Phoenix. A couple of judges had asked if I would help develop a volunteer lawyers mediation program for inmate lawsuits against the Arizona Department of Corrections, where the plaintiffs were unrepresented. They were doing it pro se, and maybe half of the lawsuits concerned medical care, others concerned safety, religious freedom, food, special diets, lots of different kinds of issues inside the walls. And uh, I told them, yeah, you helped me remember what I used to know about jail and prison law from my early days as a legal aid lawyer. And I'll start reading headlines to get a sense of some of the hot button topics. So this is 2010, 2011, early 2011. And that's when I read the words private for profit prisons for the first time. I had
Mhm.
no idea they existed. And when I first read the words, it hit me at a gut level. My sense was, no, this is a terrible mistake. This is the government's responsibility. Um, when you take away a person's liberty in the most fundamental way, that is the government's responsibility alone, in my view and the view of many others.
Mhm.
The more I dug into information about private for profit prisons, the more I became convinced this wasn't just a bad idea. This is our latest incarnation of slavery in the United States. And
Mhm.
that may sound like hyperbole, but if you go back into the history of what happened to freed slaves and their children after the Civil War, where the criminal justice system was used to re-enslave, including
Yes.
through things like convict leasing, which continued well into the 20th century. Um, that's when I decided I was going to do something about it. What at that time, I
Mhm.
wasn't sure. Um, I tried to get others interested in doing something about it, and it became clear that this was going to, at least initially, be part of my work going forward. So
Mhm.
I was at a private law firm and had a full practice. So it was a part-time aspect of my pro bono work for several years. But at some point in time, I realized that being a partner in a law firm and doing this work weren't necessarily going to work real well. So I left my firm and created this as a vehicle, abolished private prisons as a vehicle, both as a separate public interest law firm and as a charitable organization that could accept tax exempt contributions. So we chose the name. I say we. There were others involved. We chose the name Abolish Private Prisons for a couple of reasons. Number one, we wanted to be very clear about what we were about. We did not want to duplicate work that was being done by others. Uh,
Mhm.
and we wanted it to be quite clear. So if you consider other organizations, the American Civil Liberties Union, the Southern Poverty
Mhm.
Law Center, they do lots of things. The name doesn't tell you something real specific. We wanted to be real specific. Um, and chose the verb abolish quite deliberately to harken back to the pre-Civil War abolition movement.
Mhm.
So that's what got us started. And initially, our focus was litigation. We wanted to challenge the very constitutionality of prison privatization in court. So the industry sort of was birthed, if you will,
Mhm.
um, during the early years of the Reagan administration, when President Reagan was moving in the direction of privatizing lots of government functions. You know, the expression being whatever the government does, the private sector can do it better.
Mhm.
And perhaps when it comes to running prisons, there should have been a stopping point to say, should we do this at all?
Mhm.
Well, the American Bar Association, which is a voluntary association of, I think, about 400,000 lawyers nationally, um, was concerned about it. And so when I started doing some research, it put me in touch with some with the ABA. And I learned that the ABA had adopted a resolution back in 1990 that called for a moratorium on prison privatization until the complex constitutional issues presented were resolved. Well, that didn't happen. The
Yeah.
industry,
Right.
the industry grew
Mhm.
and pretty much grew under the radar because, like I said, in 2011, not only had I not heard of private prisons, but as I learned, nearly and hardly anyone else had ever heard of them either. Didn't know they existed.
Mhm.
And yet we had 12 of them in Arizona at the time.
Wow.
Still
Wow.
do. Yeah, still do. And six or seven of them contract with the Arizona Department of Corrections to incarcerate people convicted in our state courts. Um, and another five or six contract with other states to import, if you will,
Mhm.
people in the correction systems of other states, and which states those are have varied over time. And then we have private prisons and facilities that contract with the federal government. So right now, for example, the United States Marshal Service for federal pretrial detainees in the criminal system and immigration detainees through ICE, which is a civil detention process. And so the industry has a very powerful political presence in Arizona.
Yes. Yes. It sounds like it has a lot of power, a lot of the power in
Well,
your state as far as incarceration is concerned.
they make political donations. They send lobbyists to all the state capitals and to Capitol
Mhm.
Hill. Um,
Yeah.
and, they want to see their friends elected,
Mhm.
those who are friendly to the industry elected. So,
For sure.
if I was leaning in that direction, uh,
Yeah.
moving prison
Yeah.
privatization, one of the first things I'd look at is there a new source of campaign donations, political contributions in the state? I would be surprised if there was not.
Yes. Well, and like I say, this is brand new as far as being public information. I mean, it's been talked about privatizing, but it's never come to the table before. It's never been talked about on the news and in articles in the newspapers. And so that's why I wanted to at least get some information out there to the public that we need to have a discussion about this. We need to not just let this happen. And senators and Congress people, representatives need to know our thoughts about privatizing medical and mental health at this point. And so I was hoping that you would be able to enlighten us on what that actually means for people who are incarcerated. What is the difference? What happens? Because the way the state presents it is that this is wonderful. Service will be better, it will be cheaper. It's a good idea. And from what I know from looking into privatization, that has not been true in the states that have privatized. Things have gotten worse for the people who are incarcerated. So that's the purpose of this interview, and I really appreciate you lending your voice and your knowledge to help people here in Iowa understand what this means,
Well,
privatizing medical and mental health.
okay, so speaking just to the issue of privatization generally, so most of my most most of my focus has been on privatization of prison operations.
Mhm.
So so when I use the word private prison, the phrase, I'm referring to the circumstance where government has turned over operational control of a prison or a jail to a private corporation. So basically outsourcing its sovereignty
Mhm.
to private interests. And uh, maybe somewhere between 25 and 30 states at this time are using private prisons,
Mhm.
meaning 20 to 25 are not, and a number of those that are not never have. There are some states that even have laws that ban the industry. Um, New York, Washington State, Illinois, California are some that come to mind. And then there are some states that have used private prisons and have discontinued their use. Washington State again, Nevada being some pretty recent examples of that. Um, so just let me just talk about the private prison issue first, and then maybe we can talk a little bit more specifically about something like medical care after I perhaps
Okay.
provide that overview.
Okay.
So, so generally, when you're talking about a state contracting with a private for-profit prison corporation, you're for the most part talking about three corporations. So CoreCivic and the Geo Group are publicly traded prison corporations on the New York Stock Exchange. And you can read some of their public filings, such as their 10Ks. I think it's called a 10K. Yeah, their 10K filings with the SEC, um, where they talk about their business, but they also have to talk about potential threats to their business in order to warn their shareholders and potential investors.
Mhm.
And some of the things those public filings describe as threats include criminal justice reform,
Mhm.
alternatives to incarceration, sentencing reform, lenient judges, decriminalization. So those things are seen as threats to their shareholders and to their profits. And let's face it, you're not going to be in the business of being a for-profit prison corporation unless you are making profits. So
Yes.
that is always going to be the first priority, as opposed to criminal justice principles.
Right.
If you're running a for-profit prison, if you're not making money, there's no reason to be in the business.
Right. So basically, everything that people like me would like to see happen as far as prison change in prisons is in direct conflict with privatization issues and their stance.
There's definitely conflict, but I would say even more pointedly, that profit incentive is directly in conflict with people's freedom.
I totally agree, which is why I do what I do.
So, so, there's going to be a contract between a state and a prison corporation, for example. Let me go back. The third corporation is called Management and Training Corporation. which is privately held. They're based in Salt Lake. Geo Group is based in Boca Raton, I believe, and CoreCivic has its main headquarters in Nashville. So, so in any event, going back to the contracts are typically long-term for a period of years. They may include occupational guarantee, or I'm sorry, they may include what's the word I'm looking for? Occupancy guarantees. So in Arizona, I've seen contracts where the state is guaranteeing the vendor 90% or higher occupancy levels. In other kinds of government services contracts I've reviewed, I've never seen anything like that.
Like that.
And actually, if the occupancy level goes underneath the occupancy guarantee level, then the state winds up paying them for empty cells. So that creates an incentive for the state not to have those cells be empty. So if the incarceration rate should go down, the Department of Corrections would have an incentive to move people from its public beds to its private ones in order to not be paying private corporations for empty beds, as has occurred in Arizona. I don't know what each state's legislation would look like to authorize contracting with private prison corporations, but in Arizona, the privates are supposed to do it for less than a public facility would cost and get their profit out of that. So there's an incentive there then to cut costs in the operation of the facility, and your main costs are going to be your staffing.
Yeah, that's the proposal here.
Yeah,
Yes, it would be less expensive, right?
Programs, and so there's high turnover, and you have less experienced people than you might have that are running the public facilities. Let me think. If you think of private prisons, so it's an institution-based model. So if you think of hotels, nursing homes, hospitals, all institution-based, if the beds are empty, the model fails. And so with the prisons, though, the people don't have a choice whether to leave if the place is in shape,
right,
and they don't want to be there to begin with. But having said that, there is this corporate incentive to keep the beds full. So what I've done, what my colleagues and I have done when we've given public presentations at universities, bookstores, churches, other types of forums, is we've done an exercise. And what we've asked people to pretend is, let's pretend that right now, all of you are shareholders in XYZ Prison Corporation. This is our annual meeting, and we are going to come up with our 5-year strategic plan to maintain our business and to grow our business. What are some strategies we might employ? It was interesting to see some pretty sharp high schoolers and law students and people who are incarcerated in Westville Prison, Indiana, come up with a pretty similar lists of things that need to be done. We need to make sure that we're friendly with the agencies that are contracting with us. We need to make sure that our friends get elected to political office, so we better spend some money on it. We need to get into more markets. So Iowa might be ripe for this sort of thing. if our main product is threatened, as it has been, um, we need to create other products, which means wholly owned subsidiaries, for example, that are providing for-profit probation, for-profit parole,
Mm-hmm.
community electronic supervision, uh,
Mm-hmm.
private collection of court fees and fines, bail bonds, halfway houses, getting into a number of other criminal justice related services, while
Mm-hmm.
also still operating as a private prison or detention facility. So, so in any event, those are just some general things. The other thing about the private prison industry is they are not transparent. So
Right.
they are not subject to the Freedom of Information Act, or may not, probably are not subject to State Public Records Act requests.
Oh,
Not that they don't have to submit reports to the agencies that contract with them, but that their own records are not subject to public records laws.
oh,
And,
okay.
and they,
That's scary.
well, and they fight very hard to beat back proposals in front of Congress and state legislatures that would make them subject to public records laws, and they've been successful.
We already have issues with transparency with the Department of Corrections and the prison systems in Iowa. I mean, as in every state, I'm sure. But
Yeah,
this sounds like it's yet another level of protection for
yeah,
them, which is really scary.
yeah. Well, there's another area, that we've been working on quite a bit lately, and that is the whole area of government pension fund investments. So if Iowa is like most other states, my guess is your public pensions, for your state employees, county, city employees,
Will go away.
no, they're
No?
they're invested in private prison corporations.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I was thinking, I'm sorry, I was thinking along the lines of state employees when they, what their 501c3 or 401ks and their retirement plans and what have you. If it's privatized, they'll lose their state benefits. That's what
Well,
I was, yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking of the
I'm sorry.
mainly of
I was thinking of something totally different.
I'm thinking mainly of the circumstance where
Yes.
you have a fund manager or managers
Mm-hmm.
that are investing in index funds that,
Mm-hmm.
the Russell 2000, the Russell 3000 are a couple of examples where CoreCivic and Geo Group, as publicly traded corporations, are going to be in those funds that are invested in by the government pension plans,
Yes.
which is a policy issue, I suppose, if you are working for the state welfare agency, the state hospital, um, public schools, and the like. But where we have taken a closer look at it is from another standpoint, is that if those funds include the pensions of prosecutors and judges and public
Oh,
and public defenders, which they most likely do,
do
then there are other ethical issues
issues.
raised by
Yeah.
that practice. And so we, as part of our work, have gone to the American Bar Association and asked the ABA to consider adopting resolutions that address these circumstances, and they've done so. One calling for complete abolition of private prisons, jails, and juvenile detention centers, and a second one adopted in 2024 that calls for divestment of
Yeah.
lawyers and judges' pension funds from private prison corporations. Now, I'm not suggesting that lawyers and judges or any other state employees are aware of this. I doubt
Right.
that
Right.
out they are, but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
Right.
And so one of the things people can do in Iowa right now, even though you don't have private prisons, if you're covered, if you're an existing state employee or a retired state employee, you can ask of your own pension fund manager, are we invested in Geo Group or CoreCivic? And
Okay.
if you're just a member of the public, you can submit a Public Records Act request.
Okay.
And we can forward template letters for those
Would you?
purposes.
Yes. Would you
Yeah.
send that to me at Iowa Prison Perspectives?
Yeah, we can follow up after this
That'd be awesome.
conversation
Yeah.
and I can forward you a couple of templates.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so one of our basic objections to prison privatization is that a profit motivated jailer has no incentive to release people.
Right.
And in fact, just like any other for-profit business, the marketing slogan is probably "all come back now," which is
Sad to say.
not what we want to see. So in any event, we've looked at it
Oh, dear.
from a legal constitutional standpoint. The first lawsuit we filed, the judges disagreed with us. That's all right. We're going to give other judges a crack at it. We're disappointed in the ruling. We disagree with it, but we'll learn from it and we'll be taking other cracks at it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is there there is a great deal of questioning of this industry by faith-based and moral authority.
Mm-hmm.
So a number of mainstream faith organizations have adopted resolutions that call for abolition of this industry, seeing it as a conflict of interest from an ethical standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
but also a moral issue,
Moral. Yes.
even theological issue. So as an example, when we filed our first case, we had what are called amicus curiae briefs, friend of the court briefs by non-parties, submitted in support of our litigation by faith-based organizations.
Organizations. Yeah.
So, yeah. So, if you go to our website as an example, again, abolishprivateprisons.org, there's one drop down called the movement. And
Okay.
underneath that, you can see the number of resolutions from various faith organizations, the NAACP, Unitarian Universalist congregations, other kinds of civic organizations that are opposed to the presence of this industry. And, the other thing I mentioned, I just want to not forget this. When I mention that exercise that we do with people like this is a shareholder meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and if your product is threatened, or even if it's not, you just want to grow your business, you look for new markets. Well, this industry is going global. So, prison privatization is spreading in the United Kingdom, Australia, South Africa,
Mm.
other places,
Places.
and American-based companies are involved. The industry tried to get its foot in the door in Israel, and about 15 years ago, the Israeli Supreme Court ruled that prison privatization violates Israel's basic law as a human rights violation and banned the industry from the country. Now, they clearly have some different laws than we do, but like ours, it comes from the Abrahamic tradition. So,
Mm-hmm.
so in any event,
That's good to know.
yeah,
I mean, it's good to know. It's very unfortunate, but it's one of those bittersweet good to knows. It's not really good, but
there's just one thing I wanted to mention to you about the privatization of medical care in prisons. First let me start with this premise. Uh,
okay.
public prisons are no great shakes either.
Right.
So it's not like we're saying, you know, we should be using public prisons because they're so much better. What we'd like to see as an organization is we'd like to start ending our society of mass incarceration. Why
Yes.
is it we put so many people in prisons and jails here? You know, and for every person we've got in a prison and jail, we got 2.5 more whose lives are still entangled in the criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
Probation and parole, for example. And that doesn't even cover people who are out of it, but they still don't have their civil rights restored.
It
So,
also doesn't include the families, and the loved ones, the effect that prison has on them
and taxpayers,
and taxpayers.
huge impact on taxpayers.
Correct.
So what I wanted to say about medical care was this, you know, I can't extrapolate too much from this, but there has been a class action in federal court in Phoenix. I don't know how many years it's been ongoing. I've been aware of it for more than 10 years. But the whole case is about the medical care in Arizona's public prisons. The Arizona legislature years ago adopted a law that requires the director of the Arizona Department of Corrections to contract with private vendors for medical care in public prisons. Requires. What
Okay.
that means is the Department of Corrections cannot hire its own staff to provide
Mm-hmm.
medical care. The department has been in violation of the US Constitution's Eighth Amendment for years for its failure to provide proper medical care. Think about that for a minute.
I know.
The Eighth Amendment standard is that punishment cannot be cruel and unusual.
Unusual.
And the federal court in Phoenix has held the director in contempt multiple times with millions of dollars in fines
Mm-hmm.
to get the department in compliance. And the court's own medical special master has written reports that say that one of the biggest barriers to getting proper medical care in these prisons is the requirement that it be privatized. So we've been through, I would guess in the last 7, 8, 9 years, we've been through maybe 5 different medical care contractors for Arizona's public prisons.
Okay.
One, either the relationship with the state failing or they failed on the job. And so we've been through a number of different names. The one you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned at the beginning of this program is not one that's familiar to me.
Okay. Okay. And when it is the failure of the person that is of the organization that's been contracted with, what typically is behind that? What does that typically mean and look like?
You know, I don't know. There are, when I was doing work as a mediator on
Mm-hmm.
medical cases before starting down this road, you know, I can't talk about any particular cases, but one dynamic I observed, at least anecdotally, is that the medical care inside the prisons is funded by state-only dollars. So what I mean by that, as an example, is, you know, most of my career I've been more involved in healthcare law,
Mm-hmm.
and the Medicaid Act has prohibited the use of Medicaid funds inside correctional facilities. So when a person goes into prison, they either lose their Medicaid eligibility or it's
Mm-hmm.
suspended depending on the state's practice. But their care inside the prisons is no longer going to be taken care of by Medicaid, which is the majority of the dollars are federal. So the state officials who are always dealing with budget issues, especially in corrections, if somebody's a short timer inside the prison, there's actually an incentive. Let's wait until the person gets out and then they can get on the Medicaid program
Mm-hmm.
rather than treating them now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't say in fact that happens, but it sure looked to me like
Yes.
some of the dynamics suggested that that wasn't immaterial.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing is people in prisons are sicker. Uh,
Sure. And
they're
especially the people like in Iowa, life means life. And the lifers, a lot of the life, we haven't had anybody commuted for 40 years because the governor has refused any commutations. Even when they've been recommended by the board, her board has recommended, all five on the board have recommended commutation. She has not given any commutations. And people who have been, I mean, it's an elderly population. The lifers are elderly, and we don't have any. We're the only state that does not have compassionate release. So yes, these men and women are older and sicker. They've been in 30, 40. The longest is 58 years. 58
well,
years.
even if you just look at corrections from a dollar and cents perspective, I can't imagine Iowa's going to be that different from other states. Where if you took a look at what would be the cost to taxpayers to send somebody with full tuition, room and board to a state university, compared to what it will cost the taxpayer
Mm-hmm.
to put a person with a drug offense in prison for that year,
Exactly.
the costs are going to be very comparable and the
Mm-hmm.
corrections may cost more. Yeah,
Yes, it does, depending on the level. Depending
yeah.
on what level you get. It's
Well,
anywhere between 35,000 and 59,000 in Iowa.
so mass incarceration is incredibly expensive to taxpayers and it's big business
Big business
to
for the
private
prison.
interests. Yeah.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
of course, justice is not handed out uniformly. The
Right.
penal state falls most hard on the homeless, people who are poor, people with
People of color.
people of color, immigrants, people with serious mental illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so you're gonna have a sicker group to begin
To
with,
begin with,
and if they're not sick when they go in, the
they are when they
conditions,
come out. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and I mean, for example, we have one prison in Iowa, Anamosa State Penitentiary, that has black mold and asbestos and no air conditioning. So you can imagine.
That's the kind of facility that I first got involved in corrections back in 1982. The Yuma County Jail at that time, no air conditioning, temperatures in some of the quarters at 130 degrees during the summer.
Mhm. Yeah,
Terrible.
Arizona is certainly worse than Iowa. I mean, but it's 110, 115 sometimes. And I mean, the paper, any writing paper that they have is wet. It's wet from the humidity because we have so much humidity.
Well, if Iowa starts down this road, it can be hard to turn back. I certainly hope
Mhm.
Iowans decide not to do this.
I hope Iowans as a whole have a choice in this and have a voice in this decision. And that's part of the reason that I'm doing this interview and going to be doing the other things that I'm going to be doing is to get the public aware and encouraged to do what we can. I hope that this isn't already a done deal. I'm
Even if it is,
I'm a little skeptical.
there are still voter
Ways that we can turn it around.
alternatives. Yeah, I don't know what Iowa's constitution says about things like voter initiatives, but there are other ways to do that.
Well, that's what we will be looking into. And I may be in touch with you for advice along the way because my suspicion is we're going to need all the help we can get.
Well, let's just say this is the beginning of a productive relationship,
Yes,
and I thank Charlie Sullivan with Cure for making the introduction.
I do too. Thank you, Charlie.
And again, if your viewers are inclined to support our cause, make a tiny donation on our website. We'll send you our newsletters going forward.
Yes. And I'll be sure to put that up on Iowa Justice Action Network's, our webpage, and on Iowa Cure's webpage, and on Living Beyond the Bars, just so that people can be informed, because we're at the point now where that's what we need, is people to be informed and have their voices heard. So, is there anything that you want to be sure to say before we close?
Well, right now we're focused on some policy work. I can't say that the US Supreme Court gives us any reason for confidence right now.
You're very kind in the way that you word things.
Yeah. So, but the pendulum,
Right.
the pendulum swings.
Well, and that's where we're at in Iowa too. There's really nothing on the horizon that is on in any way reform or helpful for family members or for people who are incarcerated. We have a bill that is still on the table about probation, but that is literally the only thing that we have to hang our hat on that is going anywhere in Iowa right now. So it's just a time to be building and to be sticking with it. Sticking
Brick
with
by
it.
brick,
Yeah.
brick by brick. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's a time to like keep the faith, as we used to say in the 60s.
Sure.
Hang in there and keep the faith. So, okay. Well, once again, thank you so very much for being on this, and I will be in touch.
Sue, thank you for the invitation, and for all who are listening, thank you.
Yes, yes. And thank you all who have joined and who have listened. And once again, I'm Sue Hutchins, and this is Iowa Prison Perspectives. And I can be reached at iaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. I really do want to hear from you, whether you agree or disagree. And I will be back again soon with another interview. Thank you very much for joining us, and take care of yourselves. Bye for now.
I'm showing